Let's get right into it. Number 7. Alaska's No Drunk Moose Law. Did you know Alaska once had to legally ban drunk moose? Yep, not drunk people riding moose, but actual moose getting hammered on purpose. Picture this. It's Anchorage, Alaska, mid-20th century. Snow everywhere, quiet forests, and moose stumbling through town like college freshmen on a Friday night. Every winter, when apples fermented in the frost, moose would eat them and get completely wasted. They'd crash into cars, chase dogs, and even pass out in front yards. Locals found it funny at first, until the moose bar fights started getting dangerous. One famous case in the 1960s involved a bull moose that broke into a tavern after smelling beer and refused to leave. So, lawmakers stepped in with a rule that sounds like a joke. It became illegal to give alcohol to a moose. Yup. Alaska literally wrote a law against moose intoxication. Imagine being the officer who has to explain that citation. Sir, we're charging you with contributing to the delinquency of a moose. Only in Alaska can wildlife law read like a rejected Family Guy script. The truth is, humans and animals share more than we think. We both have a taste for trouble, and sometimes we just don't know when to stop. So next time you think your city's laws are weird, remember, somewhere in Alaska, it's illegal to get a moose drunk. Because someone actually did it. Number 6. Britain's mandatory longbow practice. Imagine getting fined not for skipping taxes, but for skipping archery practice. Yep. In medieval England, it was literally illegal not to shoot your longbow. Let's rewind to the 14th century. Muddy villages, smoky taverns, and England constantly at war with France. The longbow was Britain's deadliest weapon, and every able-bodied man was expected to be a part-time sniper. So King Edward III passed a law. Every Sunday, men had to go to the village green and practice shooting arrows. This wasn't just about national pride. It was military strategy. The English army's biggest flex was the longbowmen who shredded French knights at battles like Crécy and Agincourt. To keep that edge, the king made archery mandatory leisure. No darts, no football, only arrows. It got so intense that another law banned sports like soccer and bowling because they were distracting men from archery. Basically, medieval England invented gym guilt, but for bows and arrows. It's funny. Governments today struggle to get people to exercise, while back then, they made target practice a civic duty. So next time you skip the gym, remember, in 14th century England, that could have been a crime against the crown. Number 5. Denmark's baby name law. What if you had to ask the government for permission to name your baby? In Denmark, that's not a Black Mirror episode, that's the law. Since 1981, Danish parents haven't been free to name their kids whatever they want. No XAA-12, no Banana, no Thor Destroyer 2000. Instead, the government keeps an official list of about 7,000 approved names. 3,000 for boys and 4,000 for girls. If your dream name isn't on that list, you have to apply for special permission. This odd rule started as a way to protect children from ridicule and preserve Danish culture. Officials wanted names that fit the country's language and traditions, so no weird spellings or names that sound offensive in Danish. Basically, they didn't want a generation of kids named YOLO McSwagface. The irony? In trying to protect kids from bad names, Denmark created a bureaucracy of baby names. Some parents have waited weeks for approval, as if naming your child were like applying for a passport. Imagine the conversation. Congratulations, it's a girl. Now please submit Form 14B to confirm her identity. It's a weird balance, freedom versus tradition, where one country says, name your kid whatever you want, another says, not without our permission. It makes you realize names are tiny pieces of identity. And in Denmark, even those are regulated by culture. Number 4. Medieval bread respect law. Poland. In medieval Poland, dropping a piece of bread wasn't just clumsy, it was sinful. In fact, there were laws and customs that demanded you show respect to bread, or face divine disapproval and public shame. Let's rewind to the Middle Ages. A time when bread wasn't just food. It was life itself. For most Poles, especially peasants, a single loaf could mean the difference between surviving winter or starving through it. Bread was sacred. It symbolized God's blessing and human labor. So wasting it? That was practically blasphemy. That's why Polish custom, supported by both church and law, said, if you dropped bread, you had to pick it up, kiss it, and whisper a short prayer. It wasn't superstition. It was moral education. The church taught that bread deserved reverence because it came from the sweat of man's brow, and because the Eucharist itself was bread. So yes, medieval Poland basically had an early version of the 5-second rule. But make it holy. Imagine someone in the 1300s dropping a slice and panicking. Quick, kiss it before God sees. It's funny. Today we waste food without a thought. But back then, a crumb was a miracle. Their bread wasn't mass-produced. It was hand-earned, oven-blessed survival. Maybe that old Polish reverence wasn't superstition at all. Maybe it was gratitude, baked into daily life. Number 3. Ancient Egypt. Cat-killing ban. In ancient Egypt, if you killed a cat, even by accident, you could be sentenced to death. Yes. The same civilization that built pyramids also built one of history's strictest animal protection laws, all for cats. Picture Egypt around 500 BCE. Golden sands, towering temples, and cats everywhere. They weren't just pets. They were sacred. Egyptians believed cats were the earthly companions of Bastet, the goddess of home, fertility, and protection. Families kept cats not just for company, but as divine guardians, and mice hunters with heavenly approval. That devotion turned into law. Greek historians like Herodotus wrote that if anyone killed a cat, the punishment was death. No questions asked. There's even a famous story, when a Roman accidentally ran over a cat. An angry mob tore him apart, while Egyptian officials stood by helplessly, afraid to intervene. That's how deep the feline worship ran. So basically, in ancient Egypt, cats weren't just the boss. They legally outranked you. You didn't own your cat. Your cat owned you, with divine legal backing. It's funny. Thousands of years later, nothing's really changed. Cats still act like gods, and humans still serve them. Only now we pay for the privilege with cat food and rent. Maybe that's the real secret of ancient Egypt. They didn't just worship cats. They understood them. Number 2. The English Boiling Punishment Act. Here's one of the darkest and weirdest laws in English history. In the 1500s, England made it legal to boil people alive. And no, this wasn't a witch trial. It was an actual act of parliament. The year was 1531. Henry the Fine was king. The same guy who kept marrying women and then, well, retiring them dramatically. England was gripped by paranoia. Poisonings were becoming the invisible crime of the elite. So when a cook named Richard Rose was accused of poisoning a bishop's porridge, Henry decided to make an example of him. The punishment? Boiling. Literally. Rose was dropped alive into a cauldron of hot water in front of a crowd at Smithfield, London. Witnesses said he screamed for a long time before dying. And the king was so impressed by this deterrent that he turned it into law. The Boiling Act of 1531 made boiling alive the official punishment for murder by poison. Only Henry VIII could look at soup and think, you know what would fix crime? This. But with people. It's darkly poetic. England literally boiled over with paranoia. It shows how fear can twist justice. When people panic, even the most civilized societies can turn medieval overnight. The act was repealed 20 years later. But it's a chilling reminder that civilization has always had a boiling point. Number 1. France's Walking Dead marriage law. What if I told you that in France, you can marry a dead person? Yes, that's not a zombie romance movie. It's a real, legal law still on the books today. The story begins in 1960 in a small French village near Fréjus. A young woman named Irène Jodart was engaged to a soldier, André Capra, who tragically died in a dam collapse just days before their wedding. Heartbroken, Irène wrote to President Charles de Gaulle, begging for permission to marry him anyway. Most countries would have ignored it. But France? France said, oui. Moved by her story, de Gaulle approved a special marriage law, allowing posthumous marriage if two conditions were met. 1. The couple had clear plans to marry before death. 2. The surviving partner truly wished to go through with it. So in 1960, Irene stood before a judge, said her vows, alone, and officially became the widow of a man who had already died. Only France could make bureaucracy sound romantic. Where else can you fill out government paperwork? For eternal love? Till death do us part. Except in France, death's just a technicality. It's hauntingly beautiful and a little unsettling. Proof that love and law sometimes overlap in the strangest ways. Maybe that's what makes this story timeless. France didn't just legalize grief, it gave it dignity. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see